Hello and welcome to Not the Top 20 podcast, sponsored by Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund. George Ellick and me, Ali Maxwell, sampling some footballing tapas, big old championship action over the weekend. Lots to talk to you about there. Little bit of League One, tiny bit of League Two, and some cup chat as well. George, we had more than enough drama, more than enough big games really in the Championship to last a whole hour here, starting with the runaway league leaders Coventry City, who travelled to the pre-season favourites for the title, Ipswich Town, current second favourites for the title with Sky Bet. And it strikes me that in losing this game 3-0, George, Coventry must have felt a bit weird and a bit confused in that they had the better of a half in the first half, but it was 0-0 at half-time rather than like 2 or 3-0. They had shots and the opposition goalkeeper was saving them, which seems unusual. Christian Walton, 2 sensational saves across the game. And then the opposition were having shots and their shots were finding the corners. When did this come in?
Yeah, it's just a kind of a weird game to analyse because you look at it from you head to FotMob or SofaScore, wherever you get your free to access phone data on games. And you see Ipswich 3, Coventry City 0. You see the expected goals 1.45 in favour of Ipswich, 0.67 to Coventry, and you're like, oh, nice. So Ipswich turned up and Coventry had a day where things didn't go their way. And then you watch, the game back or the extended highlights or whatever you want to watch back, and you're like, oh, this actually looks very, very different to how I thought it was going to look, because there is absolutely no doubt that in the first 25 minutes or so of this game, there was only one team making the running. There was only one team controlling possession, creating chances, and that was the team that ended up losing 3-0 in Coventry. And they missed a couple of decent opportunities. Walton made one absolutely phenomenal save from Eccles, which he tipped onto the post. Yeah. Kane Kesaheda had an opportunity with a free header, but quite far out that he put wide. But it felt kind of inevitable that it was going to be Coventry who'd end up taking the lead. And maybe the most significant moment within the game was, because I just cannot imagine that had this gone the other way, Ipswich would have won the game 3-0 or possibly even won it, given the way the game was going at that point. It's
ref chat, but it's like fresh, quite original ref chat.
Yeah. Where,
I don't remember many situations like this.
Maybe even Lino chat, where early on in the game, a foul was given against Coventry and Josh Eccles took his opportunity to still shoot. And it was very clearly after the whistle had been blown and he was shown a yellow card after a lot of protestations. Is that a word? Protests. From protestations, yeah, fine. From the Ipswich players. George Hurst was booked early in the game and then was set through one-on-one, but was flagged offside. Mm-hmm. And his body language and the way that he moves makes it very, very clear that he knows that he's offside, because he kind of stops running, a shrug of the shoulders, and then he boots the ball wide of the post.
Terrible finish.
Awful finish. And that clearly, anyway, according to the rules, should be a second yellow card. It should be a yellow card. Doesn't matter that it's second yellow. Let's remember that before you in the comments say, you don't see players sent off for that. Well, yeah, a second yellow card is the same as a first yellow card. There's no difference between the two. So he should have been sent off. Watching it a few times, there's a moment where you can see the linesman basically aggressively shaking his head at the referee. Well, I think he's saying, no, don't give him a second yellow. And I might be completely wrong with this, but my analysis is that I think possibly he suddenly thinks, oh no, what if I've got this wrong? There is another Town player who's also in an offside position, but is in between the line of the linesman and Hurst. The decision is correct. Hurst is offside. But I think the liner's thinking, if I've got this wrong, and then he's had a shot afterwards and he gets a red card, that is going to look absolutely horrific for us as officials. Mm-hmm. So he's there telling them not to do it. He isn't shown a second yellow. And basically on that moment, the game turns, because then Ipswich get a foothold in the game. Agueli finishes really well.
Two exquisite finishes from him in the last week.
Really good,
The Rovers, the rearranged Blackburn Rovers game in midweek, he very composed, slid one into the far corner right at the death to equalise for Ipswich. And this is a guy, George, who his first 21 shots in the league in an Ipswich shirt, he only hit the target twice. His last 3 have all been on target. And I think we're starting to see why that level of transfer fee was dropped on this youngster.
For sure.
I believe has a better goal-scoring record than Erling Haaland at Norwegian youth level.
And also, I really liked his role in the build-up, where the ball fell to him in a position where I think we'd see most Championship attackers swing a foot at it. And rather than do that, he shifted out to the right-hand side where an overhit cross kind of came back to him, and then he put it in the bottom right-hand corner. A brilliant finish from the edge of the area. And then, of course, it was Hurst after his reprieve who scored the second goal, racing clear one-on-one, having got in behind, and finishing really nicely before Azon, who's been kind of luckless in front of goal, initially tried to square the ball, but then the ball came back to him and he finished it off to make it 3-0. It wasn't like Coventry were without chances at 1-0 and 2-0 as well. I'm kind of surprised to see how low their expected goals figure is, because it did feel like Walton made a string of saves throughout the game to keep the scoreline down. We know that Coventry have a lot of players who are very adept at finding the corner from range, and that was maybe why Walton was called into action from these kind of low XG chances. So, you know, the facts, which are the data, the scoreline will show that this was a dominant win for Ipswich. It wasn't necessarily that. If I was a Coventry fan, I wouldn't be overly concerned. I wouldn't think, oh no, the wheels are coming off. But if you're an Ipswich fan, you're certainly looking at Coventry's next run of games until they meet again on the 29th of December, because they go to Preston, they host Bristol City, they go to Southampton, and then you'd think an easier game at home to Swansea on Boxing Day. But Ipswich fans will be thinking and hoping that they will drop a few points in those games. The gap is currently 12. If they can make that gap, say, 9, or sorry, the gap's 13. If they can make the gap, no, it's 12. It is 12. If they can make the gap 9 before they get to the 29th, then Ipswich can beat them away from home, then we might have a title race back on again.
Yeah, it's certainly tempting to let your mind wander down that pathway. I think from a neutral's point of view, we all want a title race, and we know that there's going to be ebbs and flows throughout this championship season, and it's all ebbed Cov's way so far. And it feels like, for the first time, there's a good chance it could flow against them just for the rest of this month. Having said that, Ipswich are not the perfect team. You've just said at 0-0, Cov probably the better side to start this game, which I do think is worth reiterating, despite the 3-0 scoreline. And then there's the fact that Ipswich, the last 3 times they've won in the league before this, they didn't follow up and win the next game. They beat QPR 4-1 away from home, drew at home to Watford. They beat Swansea 4-1 away from home, drew at home to Wrexham. They beat Hull away from home, went and lost to Oxford, and then drew at Blackburn in midweek. So they still have plenty to work out. It is not the case that they are absolutely set to fly, but of course the quality that they've shown with I feel like there's a bit more consistency in selection in the last couple of games, and maybe a bit more consistency in performance. But Egley's finishes certainly stand out for me over the last week or so. So, that was a very, very significant result when it comes to the top of the championship. Another significant result, George, was Hull 1, Middlesbrough 4. Welcome to hell, Hull. Hellberg ball, leaving them all at sea, 4-0 at half-time. A Borough blitz that was, deadly and very, very exciting to watch because Borough had to look for a new manager when their last one, Rob Edwards, moved to Wolves in the Premier League, and they made what we considered to be a pretty exciting, or at the very least, intriguing, interesting appointment that felt like they weren't going for tried and tested, but trying to reach a new level with this appointment. And considering Matt Targett is playing centre-back at the moment due to central defensive injuries, considering that with Aidan Morris injured, Hellberg made a remarkable decision really to play Alex Gilbert as a defensive midfielder in this game. Gilbert, basically a attacking midfielder by trade, who really hasn't made a huge impact at championship level with Borough, was on loan at Charlton last season, was a sort of squad player in their promotion, and has barely been involved at all this season, goes straight in at defensive midfield, and looks like he's been playing there all his life and thriving. You making the point that there's quite a few managers in the championship who've been playing, number 8s or even defensive midfielder types, like quite far forward this season. I think of Josh Eccles recently for Coventry. I think of Jordan James for Leicester quite recently.
Marcondes for Norwich, since Clement's come in, is now playing as a 10.
Yeah, Hellberg going the other way, basically sticking a number 10 at defensive midfield, and it worked really, really well. Gilbert was dropping in between the centre-backs to pick up the ball when they're building up. So you've got the 3 kind of in that first line with the centre-backs outside of Gilbert. Sometimes it was Hackney dropping in. The full-backs, Bangura and Britton, going really wide. So if you're Hull, you have a choice to make. You either spread across the pitch defensively to stop them receiving an easy pass, or you allow that pass, and then you only really can start to engage when the fullbacks have it, and generally that's probably on the halfway line or even beyond that. If you do spread the pitch, here's the kicker, here's the catch-22 with this. If you do decide to spread the pitch, if you do decide to make it difficult to have that easy pass out wide, then in central areas where you've left a bit more space, you're not compact there, you have Hackney, the danger man, and in front of him, 4 really fluid attacking players that Hellberg selected. You've got McGree nominally off the left, but drifting inside. You've got Whittaker always rolling inside and playing very narrow as a sort of right-sided attacker. And then Strelets and Conway were a very fluid front two. Conway in particular getting a lot of joy driving out to the wing, the left side, and again, just dragging Hull defenders all over the place. Dex, who is a Middlesbrough fan, in NTT20 squad, who was cock-a-hoop after this one. Of his detailed match report, I thought the most spot on line was, Hull had no idea who to mark. And it's so true, George. This was a perfect swarm of red, a perfect storm for them, despite all the absences. And what a start for Hellberg to get 2 wins. Great for buy-in. And I think great for the league as well. Borough in second.
Yeah, totally agree. I think from a Hull perspective, as we've discussed on the betting show recently, like going into this game, Hull had the highest expected goals against total in the whole league. And they have a pretty lofty league position. Like, those two things just cannot align. And if I was a Hull fan, of course, you're going to be incredibly excited about the start that you've made under Sergei Jurkovic. And you're going to buy in massively to what he's doing. Mm-hmm. But you've got to watch that game on Friday night and think, we have to find a way to be more solid at the back. We have to find a way to stop teams from creating opportunities against us, because the attacking stuff and the attacking threat that they've got and the personnel they've got going forward means they will continue, or they should continue at least, to be a good attacking side. But Jurkovic has to work out a way to tighten them up, because, as you say, like, obviously playing against a pretty expansive system didn't help them, but this isn't the first time they've looked all at sea from a defensive perspective, and they've won games this season where they've looked all at sea from at the back, but we need to see them tighten up. But I'm excited for Borough. It feels to me like, in my mind, Borough under Edwards, I probably expected to regress, and now they've got Hellberg in. I'm like, we might see them kick on. So it could be having been heartbroken, or at least kind of feeling cheated on by Rob Edwards. I think there's a reason to look up under the new man.
Yeah, Hull have played 17 league games this season, and they've conceded 2 or more in 10 of their 17 league games this season. As you say, that cannot be aligned with any sort of top half finish, and certainly not with any sort of surprise playoff aspirations. Talking of the surprise, Sky Bet surprise came in the Championship. It came at Ashton Gate. Millwall winning this one at a price of 11-4 with Sky Bet, and doing so narrowly and tetchily. Because this was a boring first half. And you know what? That's absolutely fine. I often think if you're on the road in the Championship, in a game that you know is going to be tight, and we knew Bristol City Millwall was going to be tight, 3rd versus 4th at the start of the weekend, it is not a crime at all to make sure that first and foremost, you're not giving anything away. You're not giving too much space away, and you can make sure that you head into the second half in with a shout. That's what Millwall did here at Bristol City. And the chance came in the 59th minute when Rob Dickey won the ball and carried it into midfield, as he does so well. He passed it forward into Anis Mehmeti, who's been one of the players of the season so far in the Championship. And Neto Borges, the left wing-back, decides Mehmeti's got the ball, he might well spin away, and I've got space to attack down the left-hand side. So Borges motors forward. But what Borges hasn't thought of is that closing Mehmeti down and tackling him cleanly and winning the ball is Tristan Kramer, the best French footballer on the planet. Handsome, refined, multifaceted. A right back, a centre back, tall but good on the ball. He heads, he tackles, he crosses. And in this case, he wins the ball and he picks out Femi Aziz in 8 miles of space. And he picks him out with the outside of his foot. And Aziz drives forward. He takes 2 shots at goal, both of them saved. 2 bites of the cherry for Aziz. He doesn't eat the cherry, but you know who does. Mihailo Ivanovic gobbles it up and finishes off the chance. 1-0 Millwall. And then pressure from Bristol City. How did they not score? We had big blocks, we had big misses, we had an incorrectly disallowed goal from Zach Viner. That is fortune for Millwall to an extent. Frustration, certainly, for Bristol City, and the tension bobbled over. Bobbled over? Boiled over. At full time with a brawl. There was a brawl. There was a brawl between the coaching staffs. It was a bit of Jason Knight, a bit of Alex Neil, a bit of Jerry Struber, some of their coaches just having a big old hug for about a minute. And then that dissipated. The good news is these 2 teams play again in 3 weeks' time. That'll have some added spice on it at the Den. But let's finish on Millwall. a huge win for them and the continuation of a frankly fantastic last few months, which has them third in the championship. And not only that, we often talk about how dense this championship has been, what we call the seeded batch. And at the moment, there are only 6 points between 13 teams between 4th and 16th. But Millwall, with their form and with this win, have raised themselves nicely above that seeded batch, 3 points ahead of the team beneath them. They've got 23 points in their last 11 league games. They are one of the most serious teams in the league. They are proving it, and they are able to edge these narrow games against big opposition as they did here. So Millwall with a very, very significant win. It owed a little bit to some fortune, a lot to some grit and determination, as you'd expect. And Alex Neil is just, for the third or fourth or maybe even fifth time in English football, looking like he's doing an absolutely sensational job. What a manager he is. Only Middlesbrough and Ipswich from the top 10 ahead of the weekend one. So that 3 points did a lot of good work for Millwall. Now, George, Sheffield United 4, Stoke City 0. Sheffield United have won 4 straight league games and they've scored 3 or more in each of them. Is that good?
Yeah. Yeah. It's much better than when they were losing every game early in the season. I can tell you that for free.
They had 3 points after 9 games.
Yeah, it was a bad start. I mean, fair play to Chris Wilder, because it wasn't like he came in and immediately the results got better. It took a bit of time, but now they are looking like one of the best teams in the league, and I wouldn't rule out anything for them this season. And Wilder's spoken about doing something special this season, so he's clearly got his eyes on, after that start, somehow forcing their way into the top 6, and then once they get into there, anything can happen. This was a game that a couple of kind of key players, really. Gustavo Harmer's been out for a while. His return to the side is going to be important for Sheffield United from a chance creation perspective. It was his corner that set up Mark McGuinness for his first Blades goal with a decent header. He came close to repeating the trick with a very similar header shortly afterwards.
He had 4 headers in the first half, all identical situations, identical deliveries from Harmer, and 4 headers from McGuinness. Scores one of them, doesn't score the other 3, comes off at half-time, presumably with concussion from all the heading.
And then another player who scored his first goal for the club in Femi Siriki with a lovely finish where kind of he slaloming into the box and found a way to clip the ball into the top right-hand corner. The defending for the third goal was horrendous from Stoke. I think the assumption probably was that Siriki wasn't going to get there, the ball running out of play, but he did so. Crossed in to find Patrick Bamford just completely unmarked and able to kind of divert the ball into the bottom left-hand corner. I don't know why Stoke switched off so much and why as 2 centre-backs you're kind of defending the space in the 6-yard box rather than actually looking where the striker is. And then Sidney Peck finished nicely with a penalty, his second penalty in a couple of weeks, to make the point safe. It was just a really regulation, very cosy home win. Stoke is struggling to create anything of note throughout the game, just really looked off the boil. A surprisingly poor performance from them. And I still think, even though there have been some headline wins, such as the 3-0 win over Charlton and the 5-1 win over Bristol City and the 3-0 win over Oxford, like those, it's like a few thrashings scattered amongst just some really poor performances.
They've lost 4 of their last 5, and in 4 of their last 5 they haven't generated more than 0.8 XG in 4 of those games. So very clearly, outside of Sorba and Million.
And also, a lot of their goals have been Sorba Thomas crosses recently, which doesn't help. So they're now down to 6th, and unless they improve up, I think they're going to fall out of the playoff race quite soon. They've lost 7 of their 19 games, which is quite a high ratio for a team that high. Not many draws. So disappointing for them. But Blades now up to 18th. What are they? They are 8 points shy of Stoke in 6th. Yeah. So, very much going the right way and playing very well to go alongside the good results.
We are providing weekly XG tables on NTT20.com called Not the Top Table. We're refining them nicely over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Thanks for any feedback that we've been given. But it's a product that we're happy to provide because it provides XG, but in form terms rather than always season-long terms. So we slice them up, the last 5 games, the last 10 games, and then the season to date, so you can get a really good idea of form in terms of performances. And I'm really looking forward to the update on Tuesday, tomorrow, because I wonder if Sheffield United might be heading right to the very top of the last 5. It's not just the case that they're on some crazy finishing streak, albeit they are clearly finishing their chances very well at the moment. They are barely giving up anything. In the last 5 games, they haven't given up more than 0.5 XG in a game, apart from Leicester last week, where they're 3-0 up after 15 minutes, and Leicester came on fairly strong in the second half, and they're creating chances as well. It's really exciting, and I think what's Wilder done, it's taken him a while, hasn't it, to kind of land on something that works. There's no denying it is working at the moment. It wasn't some crazy new manager bounce where he came in and everything was absolutely fine again. I think, coming back together after your second breakup, there's always going to be some scar tissue, and a different squad, and a squad with a different mentality that had been coached in a different way. They've scored in their last 4, 3, 3, 3 and 4. And I think that when you look at the midfield balance that he's managed to achieve with Peck and Riedewald, that was something that was massively lacking. When you look at the way the team looks defensively, by which I mean not all at sea, not giving up chances on the break for fun, but quite the opposite. He's really sorted that out in the end. And then at the top of the pitch, 4 attacking players, Andre Brooks has really nailed down that role on the right-hand side, which is really exciting, an academy product. His play in the build-up for the penalty, the 4th goal, was like watching 2010 Leo Messi. He started on the right wing, on the touchline, and about 15 seconds later, he wins a penalty on the left side of the box, having played 3 different 1-2s with teammates and dribbled past 3 or 4 players. It's a really exciting piece of play from Andre Brooks. And then he's managing to wedge 2 proper goal scorers into the team as well, in what is kind of a 4-4-2, really. Tyrese Campbell playing off Patrick Bamford. And then on the left, we've seen O'Hare. Here it was Harmer. He is seemingly, him and Alan Neil, very, very good at finding the right balance, however that looks. And I think at the moment, with the situation as it was, he should get a lot of credit. It's basically, to my eyes, it's a bit of a masterclass, what Wilder and Neil have done over the last couple of months, even if it was sort of slowly but surely to start with. So couldn't be going much better for Blades. 4-0 winners at home to Stoke. It couldn't be going that much better for Southampton, who've also turned things around very nicely, Georgia. And the man that did that, Tonda Eckert, has got the job permanently. That was confirmed on Friday night and went very well on Saturday, beating Birmingham City by 3-1.
Really good game, this. And another game where I would say that if I was a Birmingham fan, you wouldn't come away overly disappointed. I don't think they were necessarily really poor within the game against a decent side. A couple of very good goals in here too. One of which was scored by Adam Armstrong. Actually, Finn Azaz opened the goal scoring with another great goal, who's a player who seems to have just absolutely come alive since the departure of Will Still. Has scored 5 goals in their last 4 games, and given he came off just after the hour mark in 2 of those, it's a pretty incredible record. Such a good player, and I'm glad now that Saints fans, who I think maybe felt like they bought a bit of a dud after a couple of weeks, and now seeing what he's capable of.
Same vibe with old Fellows on the right, do you think? Because wow, he looks a lot like Tom Fellows now.
It is weird. Like, I just can't really understand, especially because the underlying numbers were still okay, were still good under Will Still. It is funny now that the results are good. The numbers are like maybe a bit worse, but yet we're still seeing individuals doing stuff. I guess that's
the vibes are immaculate.
Well, but I guess that's kind of, when Finn Azaz plants one in the bottom corner from 25 yards fairly consistently, that's just individual quality showing through, isn't it? And Will Still would have absolutely loved to see his players do that. And whether it's sustainable, we'll have to see. Armstrong did the same. He picked up the ball pretty far out and just planted it in the bottom right from 25 yards. Another very good finish from a player bang in form now. Damari Gray was like, I can do that too, and scored the pick of the goals in the game to get Birmingham back in it. Kyogo missed it's one of those.
Harder than it looked.
Yeah. Like I was watching Gillette at the time, and the reporter made it sound as if he had almost like kicked it the opposite way from the goal from underneath the crossbar. And in reality, the ball fell pretty sharply to him, and he reacted and he spooned it over the bar from what was like a bouncing ball and a quick reaction. Yeah. Obviously, he should have done better. But, and yes, it was an open goal, but I'm going to give him a bit of leeway. He's had obviously an absolutely torrid time to his Birmingham City career, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in January about a player that I think Birmingham fans had such high hopes for, and after the first couple of games of the season, I did too. But Armstrong made the points pretty safe with a close range finish with kind of half an hour or so left of the game, which deflected into his path. So, and Birmingham came on pretty strong late on in the game, had some opportunities, but weren't able to find a way to get the one goal back to make it 3-1. So
the upshot is
make it 3-2.
Saints into 11th now, very much right in the middle of that big old seeded batch, as mentioned, 6 points separating Ipswich in 4th. And West Brom in 16th. A reminder, as if we needed it, that one amazing month can really change the whole situation. And there are still many months to go this season, lest we need reminding. So there is still, it's so tempting to say Coventry are going well. It looks like maybe Borough and Ipswich to challenge for the autos. I mean, still, much can happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Including a Saints, autos charge.
It does feel like they're a team now where it's very hard to work out why they wouldn't kick on from here. With the individuals that they've got, with the strength and depth they've got, like you look who came off the bench for them on Saturday, Robinson, who's really impressed, Archer, who we know is very good for the level, Oriel Romeu coming on for the last 10 minutes just to shore it up.
That's nice.
Joe Aribo as well. And then, in Cienza they've got a player who we've spoken about a lot, but it feels like he's going mainstream now. He's probably going to add the goals maybe to his game that enabled him to do so. He had 3 shots in this one and came close a couple of times. So look, for Southampton, this is another big win. I think it's important for Eke. Like, I think had they lost at home a day after being made permanent manager, it would have been a bit of a shambles. For Birmingham, they've just got to find a way to sort their away form out. They've only picked up 8 points on the road this season, so only 3 teams have got fewer points away from home. Doesn't really seem any reason for that to be the case. But yeah, they're just a shadow of their normal selves when playing away from St Andrews.
Yeah, it'd be nice to hear from some Blues fans, maybe in the comments on Spotify or on YouTube. I agree. I can't quite put my finger on the away versus home, like the massive gulf in the two. I don't think that away from home Birmingham City are the worst team I've ever seen. So I don't really understand it. Ryan, who's a Blues fan on NTT20 Squad, has done some really good in-depth reports on some of these games, and in particular just this feeling that Birmingham, like the shape that they had and the way that they wanted to go man for man in certain areas of the pitch, actually created so much space for Cienza and Azaz in that sort of dual number 10 role. And that was where a lot of the issues came from. Too much space in those areas of the pitch, which against a team like Saints just doesn't seem very smart. And Charlton found it out the other day, and Blues found it out now, that you are going to have to play differently against Southampton from this point, because any sort of championship mudslinging, transition-based man-to-man match isn't going to go well for you with Cienza, Azaz, fellows supporting from the right side, and Armstrong up top. Derby 1, Leicester 3. Good response from Leicester to a poor run, and I mean, what a strong start. They scored 3 goals from their first 3 shots. They also had a goal incorrectly disallowed, so it really was both a blitz in terms of the chances they created and some really good finishing as well. Jordan James putting the team on his back with a really smart assist for D. Cordova-Reid, just sliding it through some defenders that were closing him down. D. Cordova-Reid doing the rest. Who invented the skip? Oliver Skip slashing in a set piece for 2-0, and then Jordan James had his say again, scoring a classic JJ goal, crashing the box from deep, running from deep onto a nice cross and finishing well first time. So what a signing he has been. Still 21, Jordan James. If we get round to doing a 21 under 21 for this season, James, well, actually, he probably wouldn't be eligible because he costs a lot of money, and normally we're looking for sort of academy graduates, which obviously he isn't for Leicester, on loan from Rennes, I think he is. But he is still eligible. The point being that James is still so young and is showing another side to him than he was able to at Birmingham, where he was playing for a much worse team in a different role. Really great to see him looking so good. Now, did Leicester do a great job of seeing this game out from 3-0 up at half-time? Not really, no. Derby, 15 shots in the second half, only 3 on target, but it wasn't exactly just shut the game down and see it out comfortably. Sondre Langas did score a header, but that was that 3-1 win for Leicester. Let's see if they can follow that up in midweek. We've obviously got a full slate of Championship action. Feels like the games are coming unbelievably thick and fast. And for Leicester, well, Bristol City away and then Ipswich at home. this win will not mean anything if they sort of revert to type and struggle against two of the best sides in the division over the next 5 days. George, QPR 3, West Brom 1.
Good day this for QPR. An important day after the defeat against Norwich, which I think would have surprised quite a lot of their fans given their form going into it. And this is another difficult one for Baggies to accept. It's another Monday where I'm sitting here being like, Ryan Mason did something kind of mad, where off the back of one defeat against Norwich, where Josh Griffiths maybe should have done better with a couple of goals. But like from what I could tell, West Brom fans generally happy with Griffiths and happy with his performances. He's like, no, I'm going to drop you. I'm going to drop my young keeper. I'm going to bring in Joe Wildsmith, who then has a really poor game in goal for West Brom. Like it does, he just seems to, often with managers under pressure, they seem to avoid making decisions that might come back and bite them. Whereas with Mason, he seems to almost chase them, like make decisions that no one else would do. Almost like being like, yeah, this is me setting out my stall. And that so far, they're not really working. Varane scored the back end of what was like an unbelievably bad first half, like a proper half that happened only halted by Varane's header late on in injury time. And then Romain Borrell was very, very good in the second half, scoring to make it 2-0 just after an hour or so with a good finish. He then could have made it 3-0 as he used his pace to run in behind after some poor defending from the West Brom centre-backs, and he kind of clipped the ball around Joe Wildsmith before hitting the ball over the bar with an open goal from the edge of the area. Hegerberg scored a really good header, and he is looking much, much sharper now, which is good to see from a Baggies perspective. But then some good work from Richard Kone down the left-hand side, and poor defending from George Campbell, who just it seemed to kind of let him go past him, and he crossed to make it 3-1 and make the point safe. Interesting to note that Kone and Borrell have struck up a really good partnership up front for QPR, with Kone, who was clearly brought for his amazing goal scoring record. He's just a very clever footballer. He's someone who runs the channels very well. He holds the ball up really well. He's good on the ball, and he is the one often providing the bullets for Beat Borrell to be the person to go and score the goals. And that's the way that their partnership is working now, albeit I'm sure that Kone will find his goal scoring touch again relatively soon. For West Brom, it's more of the same really. They go to Southampton on Tuesday night. For Ryan Mason, possibly not the worst possible opponent right now. Maybe going to Coventry or Ipswich might be seen as tougher, but I think the way the Saints are playing and the way they're attacking at the moment, it seems unlikely for me to see them getting a result. And I think the good feeling that was built from that incredible comeback at home to Swansea winning the game 3-2 probably dissipated to a degree on Saturday, and will totally do so amongst the away support if they can't get anything on Tuesday night. So still a manager who to me seems under massive pressure, still having good moments in games, but at the end of them are coming away second best in most. And I struggle to see why that wouldn't be the case on Tuesday.
Yeah, only Michael Cheek has scored more league goals in the EFL in 2025 than Romain Borrell.
Wow.
And he's got a couple of weeks to maybe get in front of Cheek, get his nose in front of Cheek. He does just seem to be a huge big chance magnet. Yeah. Like all of his goals are like 6 yards and in.
Good movement, a lot of pace, decent finisher.
Yeah, I think that's it. Don't overthink it.
Fair play, and also should say like a great bit of recruitment, because I know that even though we were fans from last season, I didn't expect him to get a move to the Championship. I didn't expect him to start as much as he's starting, and didn't expect him to score as many goals as he's scoring. So well done, the QPR recruitment team.
Absolutely. Watford 3, Norwich 2. Kind of fun affair, this one, which is not that surprising given the way that these two teams play. Josh Sargent scored his customary goal against Watford. His 7 career goals against them are 3 more than he's scored against any other club. We were with Dave Walker of Football Clichés and Watford FC fame on Friday night, and he sent us a voice note about 2 a.m. saying, make sure you back Sargent to score any time. And we went like, 94 is not much of a price. He hasn't scored for about a dozen games. He scored within about 15 minutes. Yeah. But Watford came back into the game, equalising through Luka Kjærumgaard. The save from Kovacevic went straight back to him, and he was able to loop a header over him. Oscar Schwartau put Norwich 2-1 up just before half-time. It was a really nice attacking move and a nice assist, and Schwartau at the back post finished off. In the second half, Watford roaring back, equalising through Kjerumgaard with a, frankly, fantastic first-time finish headed into the far corner. Really interesting player for me, this guy, because he's really young. He's only 22. He's still basically the oldest of most of Watford's attackers. And on 3 occasions this season, I've watched Kjerumgaard score a brace and thought, bloody hell, he's tall. He's first time finishing with his head or from low crosses with his feet. He's shown some really nice finishing for someone of his size. Haven't seen a huge amount in terms of like all-round play that's got me super excited. But and then you realise that he's only scored in 4 games of the 19 that he's played, 13 starts. But on 3 of the 4 occasions, he's gone on to score again. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at a confidence finisher who, once he gets one, he's absolutely full of it. Does he need to kind of become a bit more of a consistent player? Looks like Javi Gracia sort of, wants him to be the main man leading the line, which at times it didn't necessarily feel like Petzolano was kind of going all out for him. But a fantastic goal to equalise. And then Tom Ince, who came off the bench because one of my favourite players in the whole league, Georgi Chakvetadze, made a start here. He's been out for the whole season so far. Started the game, came off injured in the first half. A real shame. So Ince comes on, scores the winner. A really nice move. The main man in that move, if you ask me, was the guy who got the second assist, if you like, and that is Othman Mama. Now, he hasn't had many mentions on the pod so far because he's only just making his way into this Watford side. And part of the reason for that is, early on in the season, he was at the Under-20 World Cup, which he won with Morocco, and he won as the player of the tournament, winning the golden ball for the Under-20 World Cup. It's so Watford FC, this, just buying like unbelievably fun, unbelievably young attacking players. And eventually you realise that they're pretty damn good. Mama showed some real intelligence to slide a ball through to Bola, who was overlapping down the left, and his ball across was finished by Ince. So lots to be happy about, I think, for Watford. Kind of feels like at this stage of Javi Gracia's reign, there's not many major grumbles around the change that was made. I think, it's always going to cause headlines when Watford sack a manager early on in the season because they do it every year and people get quite bored of that. But I think right now you have to say, well, the team looks certainly happier and a bit better, certainly in terms of results under Gracia. It's 3 wins, 3 draws, and just 1 defeat in their last 7. So positive vibes. We just need to see consistency now. They haven't won back-to-back this season. The last 2 times they won in the league, they didn't win the next 2 games. So again, big week for them. The other thing for them is obviously 6 wins in 9 at home is great. 6 wins in 10 at home, but only 1 win away from home. So lots of sort of consistency-esque stuff to sort out. Home to Sheffield Wednesday on Tuesday night is a good opportunity for them to get another win, and then Wrexham away on the weekend will be very, very tough. George, big one down the bottom was Swansea hosting Oxford United, and in beating Oxford United by 2-0, they leapfrog them in the table.
Yeah, this was a game settled by 2 moments of frankly outrageous quality from Josh Tymon.
They had time on their side, and
you
didn't.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot made from Oxford fans about, not keeping up the levels that we showed against Ipswich, not going for the jugular against a side who were kind of a bit downbeat, and I get that. It was a pretty, the first half was a poor performance from Oxford, who couldn't really, having shown some threat early on, and Stan Mills kind of wasting a decent opportunity with a wayward shot, didn't really take the game to Swansea to any great degree. But Swansea didn't do much either until Josh Tymon put in a delicious ball from a wide free kick that evaded Jamie Cumming, who came out to try and claim it and didn't get anywhere near it. Stamanic with a very clever little push in the back on Sam Long to make the space, and then heading it into the back of the net to make it 1-0. And then I would say probably the goal of the season so far in the Championship. Just a cross comes in from set piece that is headed to Josh Tymon, who's on the edge of the box, and he has to backpedal a little bit, and then it's kind of like a Mirror Zidane-esque technique.
Yeah.
Like a volley, having to lift his leg to almost like a horizontal.
I would dislocate my hip if I tried that.
And just struck so sweetly. And even as an Oxford fan, like at the time, not particularly happy, but watching it all back this morning, you've got to love the Swansea players. That the United response was just absolutely, not the Oxford United response, the Swansea City United player response was just incredible. Like, none of them could believe what they were seeing. An amazing strike. And it's obviously such a cliche, but like, what are you going to do about that? Like a strike worthy of winning a game. Oxford had opportunities in the second half. Well, Lancashire, after he came on, should have done better with a header at the back post. Ola Romney nearly kind of sat Vigouroux down and went to the near post, but Vigouroux saved with his feet. I would say that putting in a better performance when you've made 4 substitutions and the game is almost gone, it's not overly, it means that some of the underlying numbers around this game are probably a bit noisy because the game had been lost after a poor first half display and frustration. I'm very frustrated as an Oxford fan that we weren't able to do more in the first half when the game really mattered. I wouldn't say there's, in terms of Matos's first result, this is big. It's it gets the home fans excited. Important to keep a clean sheet as well. I wouldn't say there was loads within the game that I was particularly excited about from a Swansea perspective. I think their XG from open play was only 0.28. But yeah, for Timon, I know this was his game and his assist and then his incredible goal was enough to win it. And what is an incredibly significant win, I think, for Swansea and their promotion. Sorry, for Swansea and their survival aims.
Who knows? Championship promotion could be on.
I'd be surprised.
We talked about the way that Matos is going to use Ethan Galbraith, who's essentially their best option in about 3 or 4 different roles. Played him at right back in this game. So
Josh Key was out.
Using his versatility nicely there. Preston 1, Wrexham 1. Preston going 1-0 down early here, across from James McLean. Tapped in at the back post by big Kiefer Moore. But in sort of general Wrexham away from home vibes, they very rarely kick on. They try and defend their leads, and they had a long time to do it, and they didn't get to the end. Preston equalising with 10 minutes to go through Harrison Armstrong, and they'd had quite a lot of opportunities to do so. And I think, probably a fair result, you have to say. Wrexham now unbeaten across their last 9 in the Championship. That's their longest ever unbeaten run in the second tier of English football. It's also the joint with Rotherham, current longest unbeaten run in the EFL. But I think, both of these teams doing pretty well at the moment, you have to say. And I think 1-1, not the worst result for both sides. Preston will feel disappointed that, had they avoided that early concession, they will feel like they probably would have had the better of the game. We'll never know. Now, Blackburn and Sheffield Wednesday played for an hour or so. Blackburn were 1-0 up through Yuki Ohashi. And the rain was falling and the pitch didn't cope and the game was abandoned. We've not accidentally left in a clip from 2 months ago. It's happened again. Blackburn's pitch at Ewood Park not coping well with rain. Another game abandoned with them 1-0 up and in a good position to win. That will have to be rearranged from a fan point of view. It's embarrassing, really. It's a shambles, and I guess the only silver lining is that it really does very acutely underline the problems that they are having and have had with the Venky's ownership, who essentially have been very hands-off, shall we say, for an incredibly long time at this point. And the fact that it hasn't been reflected in a championship relegation or anything as dramatic as what we see sometimes at other clubs under poor ownerships, I would say is more down to fortune than anything else. The fact that Blackburn are doing pretty well in the main this season is more down to Valerian Ismail, I think, and some decent summer recruitment, cheap summer recruitment, more than anything else. The fact that they have had 2 games called off, George, when no other team in the league has even got close to having a game called off. I guess from a player's and a coach's point of view, Ishmael's point of view, you'd start to wonder what the point is. Twice you've prepared for a game. You've put your all into the preparation and the execution. And twice your 1-0 lead has been expunged and you've got to do it all again.
It's an absolute shambles for everybody involved. The victims here, obviously the travelling fans and everything will be frustrated, but the victims here are Blackburn Rovers fans who have seen them already drop 2 points where they would have, you'd think they're probably 10 on to beat Ipswich against 10 men from 1-0 up. They're 1-0 up here. Who knows what will happen in the reverse game? There's also a chance, I guess, there'll be some kind of sanction against Blackburn Rovers, possibly. And if that happens, who are the victims? Blackburn fans, players, management. It's such a mess.
Not a famously dry few months incoming either.
But I just don't understand how this can happen at a championship level. I don't know. It's just a total mess. And as I say, you don't want to stick the boot in too much into the club because as I said, it's the people who are employed by or support the club who are the ones that are being punished here.
Sure.
So, it's awful.
Yeah, there was a second match abandoned as well in the Championship. A Charlton and Portsmouth game was stopped early on at 0-0. There was an emergency in the stands, and sadly the gentleman involved died later in hospital. The club have written a piece this morning about Norman Barker, who passed away, describing him as one of its most loyal and recognisable faces, a constant at every game up and down the country for 40 years, always supporting the Addicts through good times and bad, with a smile on his face. His dedication to the club was recognised earlier this year. He was presented with the Colin Cameron Supporter of the Year award. Our thoughts with all Charlton fans, Norman's family and friends, and everyone who was at that game as well. Charlton and Portsmouth game abandoned rather, after 10 or 15 minutes of play with the score at 0-0. Yes, we got a midweek slate in the Championship and in League One and League Two as well, so absolutely no time to rest. Some massive games on the docket on Tuesday night. George and Matt will be breaking these down on Under the Lights, which is our midweek podcast reacting to and analysing midweek fixtures in the EFL. It is for paid subscribers of NTT20.com. So if your team's got a big game in midweek, do bear in mind that there will be some coverage on it over on NTT20.com. You can pull those podcasts through onto your preferred podcast app of choice as well, so you don't have to listen to it through Substack. Yeah, 2 games in League One, but some pretty significant wins, and the 2 teams that won up first and second in the table. So Cardiff beating Huddersfield by 3-2. A couple of nice goals in this game, George, but I think Cardiff's first goal, ooh mama. If you had to write down on paper the platonic ideal of a Brian Barry Murphy team scoring a goal in his image, it would be the goalkeeper standing on the ball inside his box and waiting to be closed down before passing it, drawing a man and fizzing it to the feet of the centre-back, Will Fish, along the floor. It would be Fish taking a touch, confidently coming forward with the ball and then punching a progressive pass through the centre of the pitch into the deep-dropping number 10. In this instance, Omari Kellyman getting a chance in that role thanks to the injury to Ruben Colwill. Then, with Kellyman getting the ball under control, you'd look up and there would be Chris Willock tucking in off the left. There would be the left-back Joel Bagan bombing on outside him, and Willock, who you have to close down, slips it into Bagan and he chips it into the box and it's headed in 6 yards out by your big number 9, Yusuf Salek. That was liquid football.
Yeah, sumptuous. Yeah, really good. I'm seeing it more and more. I think the impressive thing with BBM and his Cardiff side is that they started the season in decent form, and I think we're almost seeing him kind of implement his philosophy more and more as we go, and the players getting used to that, and no detriment whatsoever to the form. A brilliant goal there. Salek is a player that I think is surely going to come under huge interest in January. Like his profile, the fact that he's already scored championship goals in the past, that he's that proper kind of aerial threat, but can carry himself. His age, where he's still, what is he, 23?
20 young, I
23.
call that.
Yeah. They're going to have to do pretty well to keep him, because I reckon there's going to be a queue of probably pretty much the whole championship length after his signature. And
contract till 2029 gives Cardiff a hell of a lot of security there. And I think they spent about 3 or 4 mil on him.
Until he turns around and goes, yeah, I want to go. Huddersfield scored. Castledine is proving himself to be another player that probably is destined to play in the Championship sooner rather than later. A nice little corner routine with Marcus Harness just setting the ball back to Castledine to fire into the top right-hand corner. Salek then scored another header. Isaac Davis with a really nice goal. A player who we're seeing more and more of now and kind of coming into his own under Brian Barry Murphy. Shock that a young homegrown player is starting to play well under the manager's tutelage, and then a kind of messy goal that was diverted home by Joe Taylor to give Huddersfield some hope at the end, but it came to nothing. So a really good game between 2 decent footballing sides. Huddersfield have gone away from home to Luton and Cardiff, come away with nothing from both games, which might be an indication that they're not quite up to the level they're going to need to be to challenge for automatic promotion. But I do think there are, as I mentioned on Good Month, Bad Month over at NTT20.com last week, I think there are good signs there, and there were some good signs here too, but they just came up against certainly a Salek who was in the mood, and Cardiff continue their strong form, and it feels like a really good week for them to do so, with Bolton in particular, having played in the FA Cup, having lost in the FA Cup, who are seen certainly by us as their kind of biggest threat to their favouritism for the league, and with Bradford having won away from home at Argyle, who are the team that sit below them. Important to get a win just to increase their lead. And
they go to Stevenage on Tuesday night. 3rd place, Stevenage.
Exciting.
Yeah, really, really big. Couple of weeks for Cardiff. They've got Chelsea in the Cup as well in a couple of weeks. And they are the league leaders, the only team above 2 points per game. Second is Bradford City. They went to Devon. They won 1-0. At home park against Plymouth Argyle. It was a game that didn't have a huge amount in it, I think it's fair to say. And the big moment within it was somewhat controversial. I'm interested to know your thoughts on the penalty, George. It was Stephen Humphreys driving into the box from the left side. He went down, and it seemed very clear to me that he hadn't been fouled by the guy that I thought had been penalised, who was Boateng, the midfielder. It looked like a big old dive if it was Boateng and his sort of extended leg. But then you watch it again the third time and you realise that Pleguezuelo, who was behind Humphreys and sort of tracking back, very needlessly, albeit somewhat softly, I guess, extends his arm and pushes Humphreys in the back as he dribbles away from him. I don't know what Pleggy is thinking.
Yeah.
It's not going to impact things at all, other than to throw him off balance, possibly push him to the floor, and possibly give away a penalty.
And the referee does the hill. He says to him, "You pushed him," and does a push sign.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you can't really argue with it, but it just seemed. I mean, it's scored by Anthony Sarcevic. He's a very popular former Argyle player. It felt to me, George, like, and this isn't particularly interesting analysis, but the sort of thing that happens in games between one side that's really struggling in so many different ways and one team that's sitting pretty. I think there was much between the teams apart from that, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I would say that Argyle's quality in the final third was really lacking. Every time they got into a dangerous area, the composure, they didn't really come that close to scoring, and that seems to be an issue. It often is an issue with
3-game suspension, rearing its head straight away. Two more to go.
It often is an issue with teams who are out of form and out of low on confidence, is that they're able to progress the ball into good areas, but when you don't have that kind of scoring feeling in your legs, it's often hard to find it, and that seems to be the case now. We saw Simon Hallett, the Argyle owner and chairman, put a statement out last week. They're always very good statements. We're big fans of Simon, and it was good to see some fans, rather than just push back straight away, say like fair play. He's holding his hands up here. He's admitting some mistakes, but then as soon as you lose a game again, it's like, well, what are we going to do to fix this? It seems like they are keeping the faith in Tom Cleverley for now.
We were sort of fairly flippantly, I think, last week talked about Derek Adams coming in as director of football and how long till he's in the dugout. I mean, in the fan forum last week, the way that Adams spoke about Cleverley and about his role and Cleverley's role and the continued support for Cleverley would mean it would be absolutely insane at this point if Adams was the manager anytime soon, and it would be probably the worst thing yet. I think of all the poor decisions that have been made and accepted over the last 2 years or so. I think that really would be that's where the complete breakdown of communication and trust would be sealed.
It was very interesting as well to see in Simon's statement him both outline that Derek Adams is going to be in charge of recruitment. He's going to lead the recruitment drive in January, but then doubling down on being like, we have to go back to what we did so well, and that was use data. Because, and I don't know Derek Adams particularly well, but I'm surprised that if your recruitment aim for January in the summer is we need to go back to making decisions and identifying players based on data, he wouldn't necessarily be the first person that I would turn to. He clearly has an incredible eye. Like I'm sure when you consider the Morecambe teams that he built, based on picking up players, just continuing to sign Jordan Slew from National League North over and over again.
It doesn't.
Cole Stockton was another one. Like players who are unfancied, he brought into Morecambe and made them. Aaron Wildig's another one. Made them League Two or even League One players. Like he's clearly very good at recruitment. I wasn't aware previously that maybe it was data driven to start with.
Well, Jan Songo looks like he's having a decent season for Morecambe in the National League, and
mate. Get him back.
He's played for Derek Adams pretty much everywhere he's ever been. Tough scene for Argyle. They need some results, and then going to have to do it without Laurent Tolai in the next 2 games in the league. No one called anything other than Laurent Tolai has even scored for them in the last 2 and a bit months, 8 or 9 games, I think now, since someone not called Laurent Tolai scored a league goal for Plymouth Argyle. For Bradford, look, they haven't won loads of games recently, but they have at the very least kept the floor pretty high, drawing games where they've been tight. They've nicked this one. It means that they've got their highest points return after 18 games since, I think, like 1987. They are, per Nathan Evans, who's a Bradford fan who works for Opta, now one of just 12 newly promoted sides to have lost 2 or fewer of their opening 18 league games in a campaign in Football League history. So that's 865 campaigns where a side has been promoted the season prior across England's top 4 tiers. Bradford now only one of a dozen who have lost 2 or fewer in their opening 18 league games. That is some stat sniffing. I think, let's be honest, he's really sniffed that one out, as Nathan. Lastly, in the FA Cup, I always think the second round it's a relatively tough sell. Obviously, the carrot of being in the third round is very, very large. But even within our little realm, I find it a bit weird when it's like, I still want non-league teams to beat EFL teams, even though I love EFL football, because that's what the Cup's all about. There were only 4 or 5 sixth-tier teams in the draw at all, and 2 fixtures had 6th tier against 6th tier. So we didn't even see much, even the 2 that have progressed, I think it's Weston-super-Mare and Macclesfield, they didn't beat, they beat teams in their own league, or at least in their own tier. When it comes to upsets, there were some from within the EFL and some eye-catching score lines as well. Swindon beating Bolton 4-0, Salford beating Orient 4-0 as well, Exeter beating Wycombe 4-0, obviously within the same league. But if you have read anything about Exeter's financial situation at the moment, you'll know that just the extra prize money is going to make a massive difference to them.
Huge draw for them tonight.
Anything else that you wanted to flag up from the Cup second round?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk. The National League, I was actually on 5 Live the other day with, I think, the CEO of the National League talking about the campaign for 3 up, 3 down. And, it's something that I would like to commit a bit more time to. And I would very much like to hear from anybody who certainly feels strongly against 3 up, 3 down. Because, and the argument from the National League is that generally it's pretty well supported within the EFL clubs. And the notion that it's turkeys voting for Christmas isn't necessarily the case. But in Boreham Wood against Newport County, it became like, whilst watching the game, it just became kind of crystallized in my mind how obvious it is. There's a wealth of evidence anyway, whether it's the fact that no team has ever been relegated out of the EFL having been promoted the season before from the National League. Whether it's the fact that, Barnet come up and immediately are posting the best numbers in League Two and will, I'm sure, probably finish at least in the top 7. Whether it's seeing where Wrexham have gone, where Stockport have gone, like there's a wealth of evidence anyway to suggest that the top end of the National League is way better than the bottom of League Two. But it's never been laid so stark as it was on Sunday, with Boreham Wood, who are currently 5th in the National League on 44 points, 2 points off top spot. So like one of the best teams in the National League, hosted Newport County, who are bottom of the EFL. Now they went off like heavy odds on favourites to start with, right? So the market knew that Boreham Wood were a much better team than Newport, despite them being in different leagues. And the gap in quality between the two sides was absolutely vast. Like Boreham Wood won this game at a canter 3-0. They had 27 shots to Newport's 10. They had 6 big chances to Newport's 0. They had 3.8 expected goals to Newport's 0.61. This was a cup game where the team in the higher league were visibly the team who should have been in the lower league. And like for that to be the case, and obviously Newport are as poor a team as we've seen in League Two for a long time. But it also got me thinking where this is going to be an interesting season for relegated teams out of League Two, because we've had a lot of examples recently of teams getting relegated out of League Two that absolutely shouldn't have been relegated out of League Two.
Yeah.
Whether that's Forest Green and their wealth, whether that's Carlisle. And that means that normally they come down and they're upwardly mobile straight away. But what we're going to now see is we're going to see Newport County are probably going to get relegated. Second favourite relegation, Harrogate Town. Like these are teams who aren't going to be big hitters when they get relegated. And the impact that that's going to have on their clubs. We sat next to the FSA Awards. We sat next to some staff from Harrogate Town. And I said, what does relegation mean for Harrogate? And the lady I was sitting next to just said, I can't even think about it. So there is that side of things where you can't just say, well, look at the teams who get relegated internationally. They come back stronger because, they come back stronger because they've got wealthy owners. They never should have been relegated anyway. So this isn't me setting out my stall and saying, NTT20 in favour of 3 up, 3 down. It's me setting out my stall and saying it's very, very obvious that there is a problem within our pyramid where you have leagues that are basically bypassing one another now, and that cannot be healthy. But basically to start a conversation, because I'd love to hear from anyone and certainly comment, whether you're listening on as a podcast or on YouTube, with thoughts, because Sunday really got me thinking that, if just to protect the competitiveness of our leagues, it's getting a bit of a farce by kind of gatekeeping the EFL and not allowing there to be kind of freer movement between teams who obviously deserve to be competing at that level.
Yeah, I mean, I think something to add to the conversation, and again, this is not something where I feel like a sort of leading expert on the National League, and I think it's important to understand both sides of the coin in order to have a strong stance. But certainly agree with what you're saying about the level of the teams at the top of the National League versus the bottom of League Two, and the evidence is, well, it's very, very compelling, isn't it? And as you say, this was an incredibly stark demonstration of it. And before I say anything else, I want to say Boreham Wood, I don't believe, are one of the National League teams with massive budget. My understanding of Boreham Wood's success and their impressive level right now is that a lot of it is linked to the manager Luke Garrard, who's now in his second spell there. He seems to have adapted and built an even better team than the ones we saw before, and they were excellent here. And they look like a really great team. They are, as you say, fifth, over 2 PPG in the league. They're one of 6 teams who are on over 2 points per game in the National League. Like, that is, I can't explain how rare that is for any league in English football to have that level of that chunk of teams at the top taking that level of points off the chunk of teams at the bottom. It's so stacked. And what I have understood, particularly in the last week or so, wrote a big piece about League Two, and that touched on some financial stuff as well, a better understanding of budgets and player costs at that level. What I understand is that particularly York City and particularly Forest Green, and almost certainly Carlisle, when you consider the legacy of a double relegation and the wage bill that will still be there from the team that was basically built in League One, these teams have, if they were in League Two this season, would be in the top 7 for budget in League Two this season. I think there's probably an argument, and I don't have the numbers to hand, but from what I've seen suggested, York would probably have the second biggest budget in League Two this season, behind MK Dons. And what I understand to have been the case for the last few years, and there may be some stronger regulations being put in place in the National League, but it's essentially, it's been easier for owners to inject money to be used for player costs in the National League than it is in League Two and League One, where the SCMP rules are in place. It doesn't mean that you can't have wealthy owners that benefit you, and we've seen that with a number of different teams at League One and League Two level in the last few years, but you are, to a certain extent, kept on a leash. Whereas in the National League, I think I'm right in saying, in the last few years, there really hasn't been much of a leash, and almost like, whatever you want to put in, you can just spend on players.
I think the leash has been tightened a little bit in the last couple of seasons, but it certainly used to be the case.
So that's where we're at, basically. Teams, even with Wrexham gone and Stockport gone, teams in the National League who basically would be big dogs in League Two budget-wise, and therefore, in theory, be able to attract players that would be top players in League Two, and probably part of the reason why we were in this situation that you just described.
But also, it should be mentioned, there are teams who aren't necessarily big dogs, who weren't necessarily big dogs in League Two, whether it's Grimsby Town, whether it's Bromley, Harrogate going back a while, even Oldham this season, who do come up and are still, it's not just these guys have spending power that blitzes them, and therefore, the quality is just better. And as you say, it's not just, it's not Boreham Wood who are top of the league by 20 points. It's Rochdale, it's Forest Green, it's Carlisle, it's York, it's Boreham Wood, it's Scunthorpe. And I know obviously in Carlisle and Forest Green's sake, they were relegated from the EFL relatively recently, in Carlisle's case last season. But right now, there's obviously no question that this Carlisle team in the National League are a far better team than they were last season in League Two. So, as I say, it's a conversation starter rather than setting out our stall, and I'd love to understand more.
In terms of scalps, we also had Fleetwood and Cambridge beating Luton and Stockport from the league above on penalties and making it to the third round. There's more League Two teams in the third round than there are League One teams. It's the first time that's been the case for 4 years or so. That's a sort of the quirk of this season in the FA Cup. And just in case you're listening and you don't really understand how it works with prize money, or when you talk about money spinning draws and prize pots and stuff, like I can put some numbers on it that are there on the FA website. The League Two teams that have got to the third round have already, in the 2 rounds they've played and in winning 2 games, made around 130k in prize money so far. If any of them win in the third round, it's another 120, 125k, so it'll be up to about 250k for any League Two team, or any team that gets to the 4th round. When you consider there are 9 League Two teams in the draw and a couple from the National League and National League South and North as well, it's a good chance that we could have a League Two versus League Two fixture. That's not including any gate receipts as well. Let's leave that aside and just take 250k for any League Two team that can win in the third round. For most clubs, that'll be around 10% of their total player cost for the season. Certainly, depending on how you look at things, either very helpful money for January transfer business, certainly helpful money for contract extensions, which I think is a really underrated part of League Two squad building and keeping good squads together. And, as detailed in the piece and the pod last week about League Two, a lot of clubs losing upwards of £1 million, so quite helpful to earn 250 grand from a cup run to plug some of those gaps, if that's the way you want to use it. Then when it comes to the draw, if anyone's listening ahead of the draw, someone asked earlier, I think it was Hugh, I still don't quite know whether you want to be drawn away from home or at home if you're a League Two team and you're playing a Premier League side. And obviously there's different ways of looking at this. Financially, if you draw a massive club, like a Big Six club, an Arsenal or Tottenham, for example, an away draw is better financially. You do get a portion, I think around 50% of the gate receipts for the game that you play. So if you're playing against Arsenal and Tottenham, as I understand it, that can be 400, 500 grand just in the gate receipts from that game, which is clearly very, very, very significant when you think of the total costs of a club. Then I suppose you could say, well, if it's Bournemouth, there's a kind of sliding scale where we're not going to get as much in terms of gate receipts, and actually we'd rather have a better chance of beating them, and we feel like we have a better chance of beating them at home. And then obviously if you get through, then you've got the chance to draw a big club again and you get that prize money. So it's not quite as cut and dried as it's better to be away from home. But I think the one thing I will say definitively is financially it is better if it's a Big Six team to play them away from home at home. But is it more fun to get the big boys at yours? Probably. It probably is. So there you go. A fantastic weekend in English football, and hopefully broken down pretty nicely on the pod. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe on Spotify. Please let us know if we're in your top 1 or 5 on the old Spotify Wrapped. That was quite fun to watch last week. Merch.
It's Christmas.
Oh, hey.
We have merch. Ali's wearing a jumper. We've got caps, hoodies, hats.
This is good sales.
Thank you. Get it.
Why should they buy it?
Because it's really good quality and it's got our logo on it. Brilliant. Yeah. And if you're at a game and you're wearing that, someone might come over to you and be like, you like not the top 20.
That would
and then
be nice.
They might be friends forever.
Could be friends forever. Head to the link in the description of the podcast. Banana Moon are our merch dealers, and excellent people they are too. So yes, please do buy some merch. I've particularly been wearing my bobble hat quite a lot recently.
I don't know the last time I saw you and you weren't wearing some kind of merch. Of ours, not other people's.
Guess what? Because it's really high quality and it's got our logo on it.
And it's warm.
And it's cold out there at the moment. And the stuff is warm on my body. And keeps me warm and able to perform.
T-shirts.
Got one of them on as well. Cheers. Go well.